I'll just hold my paper. Preach off the sheet. I'm going to just see, by show of hands, I'm going to take a chance that you'd be willing to be honest with me by a show of hands. Have you ever, Brandon's guilty already, all right? Brother, I think you're going to have company here in a second, right? So, have you ever, just in polite conversation, walked up to somebody, greeted them, and say, "Hi, how you doing?" And then they begin to tell you how they're really doing. And you're thinking, "I wish I hadn't asked." You didn't really listen to what they said. You're like, "No, I was just saying howdy. Please don't unload all of that on me." I think two things. I think one is that we all deal with that a little bit. We get wrapped up into our own problems, our own lives, our own stresses and all of those things. And we're really not trying to dial in to what's going on in someone else's life. I also believe that the old adage, though it's not Scripture, I think it's scriptural, that people really don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so we got one verse that we're going to look at tonight, Romans chapter 12 and verse 15. It couldn't be much simpler than the verse that's here, but I want us to talk for a few minutes about the ideas that he says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep." There may be more than one mic open with that ringing like that. So it really is a pretty simple verse. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. But I want us to think about it for a little bit. The Young's Literal Translation gets it about as good as you can get it in English. To rejoice with the rejoicing and to weep with the weeping. Now that's about as literal to the Greek as you can be. It's an infinitive to rejoice and then followed by a participle. So now you've been to grammar school, right? Or at least grammar in English. So to rejoice with the rejoicing and to weep with the weeping. I think the contemporary English version, though, captures the heart of it. When others are happy, be happy with them. And when they're sad, be sad. Now, I think that's another level. That's another level of what we're talking about. I know I've done it, and I'm going to just tell you that you can either consider this a sermon or a 20-minute confession. Whichever that you want to do it, right? Because I'm as guilty as anybody. I'm as guilty as Brandon Etheridge on this deal, right? I've asked people, "How you doing?" And they start to unpack how they're really doing. And I'm wishing I hadn't asked, or I'm dialing out, trying to find a way out the back door. And I've done it. And I have to wonder if the old adage is true, people don't care what you know until they know that you care, how effective we could be if we just really cared. Not only to listen, if I ask the question, "Hey, how you doing?" and they're sad, I listen. Or I say, "How you doing?" They're like, "I couldn't be more excited. I'm just so excited about," and whatever they're excited about, that not only did we listen, but when they're excited, we get excited with them. When they're sad, we get sad with them. So the word here that's translated to rejoice, it means to enjoy a state of happiness and well-being, to rejoice, to be glad. And I think it's interesting that though the word is often translated as one of those happy words, it has in its core of the word from the same root as our word grace, charisma, all those kinds of things are all from that little same class of words. And it can be translated happy. But there's a couple of verses. Colossians 1:24, he says, "I rejoice as I suffer for you." So it's really the joy idea, I think, in our language. The idea that I'm going to choose joy. And it's that word. But in the context here, he's saying, you know what? Here's a person who's truly rejoicing. They're not pretending. They're not trying to rejoice. They're rejoicing. On the other side, though, there's me. Here's the command, to rejoice with the rejoicing. I may have a little catching up to do, right? And maybe I don't. Maybe if I care for that person enough, if my little child comes in and they're excited about something and they're trying to tell me all about it, I don't have a clue what they're saying. They're so excited. They're just, but I'm excited that they're excited. I'm excited for them because I love them. But what about with my brother and sister? And what about with the one who's in the world? The word that translated here, sad, means to weep or to wail, an emphasis upon the noise accompanying the weeping. I thought about the song. There's a song about crying pretty or not crying pretty or something out there. I don't know. But, I don't think anybody cries real pretty. Somebody may be less pretty than others. It's not attractive usually if somebody's crying. Not attractive. I don't particularly care to be around somebody who's crying. I mean, I understand we all get sad and cry from time to time. I've cried from time to time. But the challenge I see that Paul is saying is that, look, I need to learn how to rejoice with the rejoicing. I need to learn how to cry with the crying. And the word there is pretty strong. It's not just somebody who shed a silent tear. It's somebody who's sobbing, weeping, wailing. An audible cry is the idea. I thought about this one, Luke chapter 15, 5 and 6. And so it's the parable of what? A man had 100 sheep. He lost one. He left the 99. He went back out and searched until he found his one sheep. He throws his sheep on his shoulders, comes back home. When he gets home, he calls who? He calls his friends together and says what? Rejoice with me, for I've found the lost sheep. I found this sheep that was lost, but now it's found. I had never seen that in that parable before, so I was kind of doing some searching and looking. Shazam! I mean, think about it. In Jesus' parable, this guy that's got a lost sheep, his response when he finds his lost sheep is he comes home rejoicing. He's rejoicing so much that he calls his friends. And when his friends come, what do? They rejoice with him. He goes on to say what? In the same way any sinner who repents, the angels in heaven rejoice, right? They're rejoicing. But I'm thinking, if my friends rejoice with me when I rejoice, what am I to someone when I fail to rejoice when they're rejoicing? Am I a friend? That's interesting. Philippians chapter 2, verses 17 and 18, he says, even if I'm being poured out as a drink offering upon the sacrificial offering of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all. Likewise, you also should be glad and rejoice with me. And I think it was an interesting context, and it may be in a confusion more than clearing anything up in here, but if you look at the context, the Philippian church is doing some stuff, and the gospel is spreading, and they're suffering some hardships in the midst of doing that. Paul's spreading the gospel. He's suffering some hardships in the midst of that. And they're all rejoicing for spiritual things. But I better learn the art of rejoicing for some temporal things too. Because the person I'm talking to may only be able to rejoice in those. And I may not be too excited about what they're excited about. But if I care about them enough, I will be excited with them and for them. Not because I think what happened to them was so spectacular, but I care for them. And what excites them is going to be able to excite me. 1 Corinthians 12 and verse 26, if one member suffers, all suffer. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. So there in another context, Paul's saying much the same thing. We live in a body. We're part of a body. 1 Corinthians 12 is all a one body kind of thing. And he says, as one body, when one of our members, and member doesn't mean like member of, Fin and Feather out here, or member of Auto Club or whatever, or member of the country club. No, member like your finger, like your big toe, like your elbow. If you hit your funny bone, I've smacked my thumb with a hammer and my whole body responded, right? My thumb hurt, but my whole body, just crunched up, bent over. And that's the image. If one member of the body is injured, if one member is hurting, the whole body hurts, the whole body suffers. But if one member is honored, the whole body is honored. It's a message to us. It's like this one, to rejoice with the rejoicing, to weep with the weeping. I thought this one was interesting. Here, Job 30, I didn't go back and read it to make sure, but I believe the context is Job is basically making another defense for himself. Here in a few chapters after that, God's going to say, hey, Job, where were you when I? And Job's going to get quiet. But in the midst of defending himself, he says, did not I weep for him whose day was hard? Was not my soul grieved for the needy? And I'm thinking, no wonder God said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? Because Job seems to be able to say with great honesty, hey, when I saw someone weeping over whose day was hard, man, I was weeping with them. I wept with the guy who had a hard day. And Job says, was not my soul grieved for the needy? Here's Job. He's got lots of stuff. He's a rich man, and yet when he sees the needy, his heart was grieved for them. And no wonder God says to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? For who could make a statement like that to his friends and them not call him on it if it were not true? Last passage in that regards, Hebrews 13 verse 3, remember those who are in prison as though in prison with them, and those who are mistreated, since you also are in the body. Now, I bring that one up because not that our context is saying that anybody's in prison, but that idea that I'm going to weep with the weeping and that I'm going to rejoice with the rejoicing. Here's somebody who says, look, remember those who are in prison as though in prison with them. Share their experience. Share their emotion. Put yourself in their situation. Imagine what it must be like in their excitement. Imagine what it must be like in their weeping, that kind of thing. And those who are mistreated since you are in the body. He's saying it's right for us as being members of the body to sympathize, to empathize, to, what's the word I want to use there? To have compassion. Now take those words apart a little bit, right? Sympathize. So pathos, it means have feelings, right? And that sim prefix means to have feelings along together with. Empathy, same kind of thing. Pathos, pathos is that part of that word that means to have feelings, and I'm going to share those feelings. I'm going to have those with them. That word compassion, right? So another word, passion for feelings. And I'm going to have feelings. I'm going to feel with them, right? I'm going to have compassion. So even our word that means that I'm going to do something nice to somebody that's hurting really means I'm going to feel along with if we take the word apart. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? I'm just going to talk for a second. I'm going to finish the lesson up. Is it enough for us if somebody comes to our congregation and has a request, they request some food, they request some gas, for us to give them $20, $25 of gas or food or whatever, but have sort of a condescending attitude? How much different would the gift be if it was accompanied with a true empathy, a true sympathy, a true compassion, to truly feel along with this person? Man, I wish I could wave a wand and take away all of your hurts. Here's what we can do today. Know that I hurt with you. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 12, that word compassion that wasn't in our Romans 12, but I think it's a similar idea. The command in Colossians 3:12 is put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. I should have put verse 13. It ends in a comma right there. But I think about how important that it is. Not only that I say something nice, that I respond in an appropriate manner, but I respond in an emotionally appropriate manner. Here we are in the body to rejoice with a rejoicing, to weep with a weeping. As we consider us trying to be lights to this world, that whole idea they're going to not care what we know until they know that we care. Maybe that's our missing element in effective evangelism. Maybe it's not that we don't know enough. Maybe it's not that we have loved enough, that we've truly cared enough. I want to read that CEV version one more time, and the invitation will be yours. When others are happy, be happy with them. And when they are sad, be sad. I'm not sure I could have brought us a simpler message this evening. And I don't know that I could have brought a more challenging one either. It's not very hard to understand. It'll be hard to remember when my mind's running this way and I run into somebody whose mind is going a different way. Well, I'll make the effort to rejoice with the rejoicing and to weep with the weeping. I believe God will bless us accordingly to how well we do with that. I don't know what's going on in your life, and we certainly want to rejoice with you if you're rejoicing. We want to weep with you if you're weeping. If God's laid a burden on your heart, if there's something that we can pray with you over,